How's it going, Eliminators? Today, we're going to be checking out the Mini-Ductor Venom HP induction heating tool made by Induction Innovations. In today's video, I'm going to be unboxing it, briefly explaining exactly how this product works without getting too technical, and then you guys are going to get to see it in action. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So we're over here on the workbench, and in front of me I have the Mini-Ductor Venom HP induction heating tool made by Induction Innovations. So I'm going to start off by doing an unboxing of this product, and you guys are probably wondering, what the heck is this thing? Don't worry, I'm going to take you through it without getting too scientific because there's a lot of technical stuff going on here. But as always, I'm going to give you the simple breakdown of it. So a crash course on how induction heating works. They have these coils here. Electricity flows through those coils and it heats up steel. So essentially you get, just like they say, the heat without the flame. So this product right here is essentially a substitute for something like an oxyacetylene torch. Instead of using an open flame, you can use this. It's a little bit safer and much more efficient. So inside of the box, we obviously have the Venom HP induction heating tool. We also have a bag here that contains the operator's manual and the warranty sheet, as well as a few various coils, which we're going to get into. Apart from that, they also give you this little booklet here, giving you some further information on their other line of products. They also include the Mini-Ductor Quick Start Guide, which just gives you a few tips on what to do and what not to do. So now that I've shown you guys what we have in front of us, how exactly does this work? Well, inside of this Venom HP is a power supply and an inverter. Now that inverter inverts AC line voltage from your electrical socket to what's known as a high frequency output used for induction heating. Now that's where these coils come into play here, because as current flows through the coil, it generates a magnetic field that penetrates the object, creating an electrical current inside of the conductive object you're heating. So instead of using an open flame on the side of a nut from, let's say, an oxyacetylene torch, you put the coil from the induction heating tool around that nut. It generates a magnetic field penetrating the object, heating that object from the inside out. And when this happens, it's up to 90% more efficient than using something like a torch. Now, when talking about how versatile this system is, it really comes down to which type of coils and how many coils you have. Now, keep in mind, there's going to be 3 basic coils as well as some other accessories that I can show off. But in today's video, we're going to stick with just these 3 here. We have what's known as a preformed coil. So these are going to be a hard coil that are formed to a certain length, as well as a certain diameter. So what we have here inside of the box is a 7/8 inch preformed coil. We have what's known as their bearing buddy. This is a coil that is soft, which will allow you to wrap it around loosely any object that you cannot fit one of their preformed coils. And then we also have what's known as their U-form coil. So this one is slightly rigid, however, still malleable, which will allow you to bend it and form it in any shape that you need. Now, setting this tool up is incredibly simple. With the unit unplugged, you're going to come over to this plastic piece here, and you're going to twist it to unlock it. You can then take the 2 ends of any coil that you're going to be using and insert them into the slots right there. Then come up to the plastic locking mechanism here and twist it until you hear the click. Your coil is now firmly secured into the induction heating tool. So once you have your coil locked in, plug in the Venom HP, and when you depress the button, you're going to see a little green light illuminate here. See that? And that's going to tell you that it is flowing current through that coil. So in front of me, I just have a nut that is seized to a bolt here. You guys can see that, all that rust in there. So what we're going to do is put the coil over the nut here, and we're going to depress the button. And you guys are going to see, check that out, it's already heating up. That's just a few seconds. Pull that off, and you guys can see already the discoloration there from the heat. Now, the one thing I did want to mention about the Mini-Ductor Venom HP is going to be the duty cycle. So right here on the quick start guide, you guys can see that the max time you want to be running this machine is going to be for 2 minutes. However, if you run it for 2 minutes, which is a full duty cycle, you need to let it sit and cool down for 2 minutes. So just keep in mind, it's 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. However, in the owner's manual, it does mention that if you're heating something up that's small, such as this nut here, you can try it for approximately 2 seconds on and 2 seconds off, just to try to get this to the point where it'll loosen off. We're not trying to get everything to the point where it's superheated and glowing red hot each and every single time we use this. Because you have to keep in mind that whenever you heat something up to the point where it's red hot, especially a hardened item, you're going to be affecting its hardness and you are going to be weakening its strength. Now, as always, I try to be as transparent as possible here on the channel. So I did want to give a big shout out to Induction Innovations for sending me this Mini-Ductor Venom HP at no cost. They sent this down to us and they were even kind enough to say that we were allowed to keep it as long as we'd be using it in some of our upcoming videos, which I can assure you we absolutely will be. I'm going to be putting this thing through the paces, and up next we're going to be testing out some of the different coils. Now obviously the Venom HP works exceptionally well at heating up a small nut on a tiny little bolt, but I wanted to showcase some of the other applications that we here at Eliminator Performance could use this tool for, and one of those things is going to be heating up blade adapters that go onto the bottom of the crankshaft of a lawnmower. A lot of times these things seize onto the crankshaft, and generally you have to put some type of puller onto these blade adapters, and sometimes they're so seized that they end up cracking. Might be difficult to see, but you should be able to see a crack all the way through there, and unfortunately we then have to replace it. So one of the things that I would like to try is going to be the Bearing Buddy coil. That's that soft one that I showed you guys right over here, and the idea behind this is going to be to take the Bearing Buddy coil and wrap it around one of these blade adapters so that we can heat up just the blade adapter, hopefully making it easier to remove. Now, the only issue I foresee with using the Bearing Buddy is that it's incredibly soft and it doesn't really hold its shape as much as the malleable U-form coil. But this one is malleable enough that it will allow me to make my own coil around an object, and it should stay in position quite well. So just as a proof of concept here, I have the blade adapter inside of the vise. I'm going to go ahead and depress the button here, and we're going to see how long it takes for the Venom HP to heat up the blade adapter here. Check this out, guys. This is going to be awesome. So using the U-form coil allows us to put heat directly on the blade adapter, and you guys can see it's heating up really good. So the Venom HP is going to be an awesome addition to the tools that I currently have at my disposal. And just to show you guys how hot that thing got, we'll get the heat gun on here and I'll try to show you guys. This thing's bouncing around quite a bit, but over 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That thing's cooking. So now that I know that the U-form coil should work good on getting seized blade adapters off, I have a 6.75 Eager 1 off a Craftsman, and it has a blade adapter that's seized in place. So I'm going to flip this engine upside down and we're going to try and remove it. The blade adapter right here, I'm going to go ahead and grab it and lift the engine right up so you guys can see that is seized on there. It's not coming off easily. So the benefits of having the U-form coil is you can't get a preformed coil over top of this blade adapter. So I'm going to have to unravel this and wrap it around the blade adapter, just like you saw me do in the vise there. Now, the benefits of using induction heat, again, is you're getting a very direct heat. Like I said, that heat is being applied directly to the blade adapter, not using an open flame on an oxyacetylene torch that could damage the rubber seal on the engine there. So obviously there's going to be some grease and oil that has come down from the engine. So you guys are going to want to be doing this in a ventilated area. I got the door open. The fans are going. I'll see if I can get a temp readout for you guys here. This thing is cooking hot. Over 550 degrees Fahrenheit. Now the idea here is to use the Venom HP to heat this thing up until the point where I can remove it by hand. I've changed gloves here because of how hot this thing has got, but we're almost there. Check it out, guys. Look at that. Seized blade adapter that I would have had to put a puller to it. And a lot of times these things are so seized that they end up completely breaking and cracking, like you saw on the other one there. So if you guys are ever in the position where you have one of these seized blade adapters, once you do get it removed, a little bit of nickel anti-seize on that shaft, go ahead and reinstall that blade adapter and you won't have to worry about it seizing in the future. Now, as I showed you guys, right out of the box, Induction Innovations supplies you with the 7/8 preformed coil, the U-form coil, as well as the bearing buddy. However, they also offer a wide range of preformed and extended preformed coils that will allow the Mini-Ductor Venom HP to become even more versatile. And you can see here that they're using it on what appears to be a vehicle to heat up a flat piece of metal, probably to reform some bodywork there. Now, apart from that, you can also purchase these heating pads, which would be handy in the automotive industry for heating up vinyl stickers for removal off of vehicles. And then lastly, they also have what's known as a rosebud, which applies a large amount of heat in a very small pad, so you get a very concentrated heat application. So with that being said, we went out and bought the Mini-Ductor standard coil kit with our own money, and it includes a vast majority of these coils that you see in front of you that makes this Mini-Ductor Venom HP even more versatile. Now, as I mentioned, inside the box we had the standard length 7/8 inch preformed coil. However, inside of the standard coil kit, you're going to get an extended one. So if you have a longer rod or bolt that you're trying to get to, this will make that easy. You won't have to worry about anything coming into contact with the tip of the Mini-Ductor. What I was more interested in, though, was going to be some of these larger preformed coils, because a lot of times I get mower decks from customers that have never removed their blades to sharpen them or have never brought them in for servicing. So the blade nut that attaches to the bottom of the spindle can sometimes be seized. So much so where even my cordless impact or even a pneumatic impact will not remove them, and we've had to use an oxyacetylene torch to heat up the nut. Now in front of me I have an old mower deck that's been sitting outside. This came off of that old Honda that I had, and this design is much different than your average blade design. Instead of having nuts that attach to a spindle, you have a bolt that goes right through the spindle, as well as two blade bolts to the left and the right there. And I wanted to use my Milwaukee 1/2 inch impact here with the 6 amp hour battery to show you guys how seized these things are. So I have this currently set to the position that gives me approximately 450 foot-pounds of breakaway torque. And to show you guys how much battery life is here, we have about 3 bars on the LED lights there. And I'm gonna get onto this thing and see if we can remove it. You guys can see that thing is not moving and is definitely seized in place. So I got the Venom HP set up here. I'm going to heat up the head of this bolt. So again, we're doing a little bit backwards. Instead of heating up the nut, we're going to try to heat up the head of the bolt, and hopefully a little bit of thermal radiation will allow that heat to radiate down to the threads of the bolt and hopefully loosen it up a little bit. I'm going to try and heat this thing up fairly well, and then I'll go ahead and use my Milwaukee impact there to remove it. We can see a little bit of smoke coming off it now, so it is getting pretty hot down there. So you guys can see the discoloration between the one on the left and the one on the right. We'll go ahead and try to remove this. Check that out, guys. Awesome. And you have to remember that I'm not always going to be removing a mower deck to work on. So a lot of times I lift the front of a mower deck up on my lift and I'm working upside down. I'll put a picture up on screen there so you guys can see. So going back to the standard coil kit, having something like these larger preformed coils will allow me to work upside down, hold this preformed coil in position over top of a spindle blade nut. I can go ahead and heat that up, and then with the addition of my Milwaukee impact, go ahead and blast those things off with ease. So I have a Craftsman riding lawnmower that came into the shop for a starter solenoid replacement. That has been fixed, so the riding lawnmower now starts, runs, and drives, and also cuts. However, the customer complained that he couldn't get the blade bolts off and he wants the blade sharpened. So I'm going to be using the Venom HP, and we're going to try and see if we can get them unseized. So we're up under the deck. You guys can see that there are some holes in this mower deck. My customer uses this mower as a backup mower, but you guys are going to notice that the blades here are held on not by a nut, but a bolt that goes into the spindle. This is a 9/16 head bolt. It's not very big, and I don't want to break that bolt inside of the spindle because then this mower wouldn't be useful at all. The blades are currently extremely dull and they do need to be sharpened. So I'm going to attempt to use the Venom HP to heat up the head of this bolt. Hopefully some of that heat can radiate downwards into the threads, and we'll see if we can get it out. Now before we get started, I have selected a shorter coil that is large enough to go over top of the head of the bolt, so there's a space in between the bolt head and the coil. And using the shorter preformed coil out of the standard coil kit, it allows me to have the Venom HP underneath the rider on my lift, and it's actually the perfect height. So I've depressed the button on the Venom HP. You might be able to hear the fan kicked on, and we're going to start heating up the head of that bolt. You guys can see a little bit of moisture coming out of there as this thing heats up. That should be good. All right, let's see if we can get this thing off. And just like that, guys, check that out. So that went from a seized bolt where my customer couldn't get the blade off and had to sharpen the blades while they were still on the mower deck to heating up the head of that bolt, and the impact didn't even work that hard to remove it. So same thing coming to the other side here, but I didn't show you guys me using the Milwaukee here to try to remove the seized bolt. But using this Venom HP, I'm telling you guys, just a few seconds with that coil on the head of that bolt. We're not even getting it red hot. We're just heating it up just until the metal is turning dark. And I'm trying to keep that coil in what's known as a floating position. So we're not trying to touch the protective heat wrap that's on the preformed coil to the metal that we're heating up. As you guys can see, a little bit of smoke coming off. But again, you know, if I was to use a torch on something, this deck isn't really that bad, but some decks are filled with grass, all dry. And like I said, the benefits of using induction heating, especially the Mini-Ductor Venom HP here, is that you're not using an open flame. So I don't have to worry about igniting dry grass on the top of a mower deck or damaging a rubber seal on the spindle bearing. So that should be hot enough. Let's see if we can get this off. Check that out. Comes out like nothing, guys. Now, removing a blade to sharpen it may not seem that important. I mean, they do sell these cheap little grinding stones that allow you to use a drill and sharpen your blade while it's still attached to the mower deck. However, by removing the blade, you're going to be able to get a nice, sharp, clean cutting edge onto that blade, as well as being able to properly balance the blade. And that's equally as important as sharpening the blade, because without removing the blade, you're not going to be able to get a proper balance, which may lead to vibration in your mower deck when cutting grass. If you guys want to see how I sharpen and balance my blades, you can click in the top right of your screen, and I'll link that video in the description as well. Now, after using the Mini-Ductor, the bolt and the washers, and even the center of of the blade are going to be hot, but there's one thing that I want to point out, and that is going to be properly letting the Venom HP Mini-Ductor cool it down. So inside of this is the fan, and the fan is going to cool it down after you use it. But the fan requires electricity, so you're going to want to leave this plugged in and just set it off to the side and allow this product to cool down before you go ahead and unplug it. Once you hear the internal fan shut off, it's safe to unplug, and you just want to ensure that it is totally cooled down before you go ahead and store it. Now, with that being said, I just briefly wanted to touch on extension cords because Induction Innovations lists 2 authorized extension cords for you to use. Now, when I'm working on, the workbench here, I have my power outlets right here, and you get about 5.5 feet of cord with the Mini-Ductor Venom HP. However, if you're working underneath a riding lawnmower like I am outside, I don't have any outlets near me, so I need to use an extension cord. Now, if you are going to use an extension cord, keep in mind that if you're using a 25-foot extension cord, it has to be 14 gauge. And if you were using a 50-foot extension cord, it has to be 12 gauge wire. And just on the topic of using extension cords and where you can plug the Mini-Ductor Venom HP into, I wanted to briefly discuss the use of generators, because you can use a generator to power this Mini-Ductor Venom HP. However, in the manual, it states that some generators have an output that is greater than 140 volts, which could damage your Mini-Ductor product. So what they recommend is using a generator that has a voltage regulator on it, and that it is regulating voltage at no more than 120 volts for the Venom HP. Now, when we were heating up that spindle bolt on that riding lawnmower out there, I mentioned that you want to keep a space in between the coil and the object in which you're heating. And there's going to be a reason for that. These coils, believe it or not, don't actually heat up by themselves. When they create that magnetic field, the object that you're heating radiates heat outwards. And if you're not careful, like I wasn't with this guy right here, you will end up burning up the protective coating that goes around these coils. Now, this is going to be super important because we can see here that the coil is now exposed, and we don't want to touch that bare metal because you could end up creating a short, and it could lead to damaging the Mini-Ductor. So even though I ended up damaging this coil in the process of removing that blade adapter, these coils cost about $13 US, and I went out and purchased another 2 U-form coil, part number MD99-602. These things are going to come in super handy. Now, the mistake that I made, you guys can see here, is that I wrapped it too many times. You don't actually need as many wraps as you can get. 1 or 2 wraps will suffice. So instead of wrapping it 3 times and having a very short lead, like I had here, which left this little bit of heat shrink that they use to hold the protective covering to the connective ends there, that melted as well, because now these were so close to the blade adapter that we were heating, and that blade adapter was super seized onto that crankshaft, and I should have backed off and took a wrap off this so that I could extend these leads and open up this coil, but I never did, and I ended up damaging this coil in the process. So for instance, I have the coil here, and I did 1 less wrap, and then I did it wider as well, so it has a larger diameter, and you guys can see there's a nice space in between the coil and the blade adapter. So that probably would have prevented me from completely destroying that coil, but that's all right. Like I said, these are relatively inexpensive, and it's a lesson learned for me. So as long as you guys are using the coils properly, it will lead to an increased life expectancy of your coils, because these are going to be consumables. Eventually, you will have to replace them like you see here. However, this is a perfect time to discuss the discoloration of the protectant coating on these coils. So if you do notice a little bit of browning on them, that's perfectly normal. As Induction Innovations have stated, this protective heat shield will end up discoloring over time as you use them. However, as I showed you guys, if you do see that protective covering completely disintegrate and you see the exposed metal of the coil itself, go ahead and dispose of this and replace it. And one last thing that I wanted to mention about the Mini-Ductor Venom HP is if we come down to the push button right here, you're going to notice that there's a little light symbol, and underneath that is going to be a switch right on top of the push button. And if we flip that switch, it turns the LED light on. So if you're working in a space that has limited visibility, that LED light is going to be an added bonus and will help you see where you're going to be putting that coil. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was pricing. You know, how much is something like this going to cost if you guys are going to go out and buy one of these? So first off, the Mini-Ductor Venom HP. This is the 4th generation of their Mini-Ductor line. So this is the premium Mini-Ductor that has the most power output. This Venom HP is going to run you about $679 US. The Mini-Ductor standard coil kit costs about $150 US. And then, like I had mentioned, I went out and purchased these U-form coils for about $13 US each. So just keep in mind that with the premium price you're paying for a kit such as this, you're getting a professional tool that's giving you professional results. I mean, you guys saw yourselves just how quickly the Venom HP was able to free up those bolts that were seized into the mower spindle. The Venom HP here runs at 120 volts at 15 amps, and it comes with an 18 amp cable. So like I had said, this is going to be the premium of the handheld mobile Mini-Ductor product line. You can come over here to the standard Venom, which is going to run at 110 volts and 10 amps. So it's not going to be as powerful as the Venom HP. However, it's a little bit more affordable. And then coming down to the 2nd generation Mini-Ductor, this one here is going to be your most affordable option for the handheld mobile Mini-Ductor product line. And then moving up from there, Induction Innovations also has their ALFE product line, which is going to be a little bit more robust. You have the Inductor 3.5 here, which is going to be running at 230 volts, 16 amp, and you're going to notice there P1, I believe that refers to phase 1 electricity. So you'd be able to use that in like an automotive shop that has a regular power outlet. However, the Inductor 5.0 is going to be more of an industrial type equipment. It runs at 208 volts and 20 amps, and you're going to notice right there P3, I believe that refers to 3-phase power, which, like I said, you're going to see more in an industrial setting. Well, that's going to wrap up today's video. Like I said, I'm not being paid to promote this product, but I wanted to give a huge shout out to Induction Innovations for sending this Mini-Ductor Venom HP to us at no cost. And as I had mentioned, they were kind enough to let us keep it as long as we'd be using it in some of our upcoming videos, which I do have some videos planned using this Venom HP on some snowblowers. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned to the channel this fall and this winter to see those. If you guys want to check out the Mini-Ductor Venom HP or any other Induction Innovations products, you can check out their website at www.theinductor.com. Their website, as well as all of their social media links, will be linked in the description and the comments down below. With that being said, though, if you guys enjoyed the video, think about leaving me a thumbs up. You know, it really helps me out. You can click here to subscribe and click over here to watch one of my previous videos. I upload every single week, so be sure to stop on by next week, check channel out for new content. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.